Something feels wrong in the job market right now. Not crashing, not collapsing, just wrong. The US economy is still adding jobs. Unemployment is still relatively low. Economists keep repeating the same phrase. The labor market remains resilient, but millions of workers are having a completely different experience. People with solid resumes are getting rejected from jobs they would have landed easily 2 years ago. Companies are posting openings and never hiring anyone. Recruiters are disappearing halfway through interview processes. White-collar workers, who once felt untouchable, are suddenly competing for fewer positions at lower pay. According to Challenger, Gray, and Christmas, US employers announced more than 80,000 job cuts in April alone, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that most recent hiring growth is concentrated in healthcare and government, while tech, manufacturing, media, and professional services continue slowing down. This is part of our collapse series. That disconnect between what the data says and what workers are actually experiencing is what this video is about. By the end, you will understand exactly why the job market feels so wrong right now, why the official numbers keep missing it, and why that feeling is not going to resolve itself the way most people are assuming it will. Stay with me. Part 1. The headlines are lying by omission. The US added more than 100,000 jobs in April. On paper, that sounds solid. But once you zoom in, the momentum looks much weaker than the headline suggests. Healthcare accounted for a massive share of those gains. Government hiring also helped support the numbers. Meanwhile, private sector industries tied to white-collar employment are slowing down almost everywhere. Tech companies are hiring more cautiously. Media companies continue cutting staff. Finance firms are reducing recruiting activity. Corporate hiring cycles, that used to take 2 or 3 weeks, now stretch across multiple months. This concentration matters more than most people realize. When economists say jobs are still being added, many workers hear something that does not match their reality. The jobs being added are not always accessible to the workers losing opportunities elsewhere. A laid-off recruiter cannot instantly become a registered nurse. A marketing coordinator cannot easily transition into specialized healthcare support without certifications, licensing, or years of additional training. That mismatch is one of the most important and least discussed features of the current labor market. The headline number looks decent because healthcare keeps pulling the total upward. But for the millions of workers whose careers were built in professional services, technology, or media, the market they are navigating looks nothing like the one described in the monthly jobs report. The data is accurate. It is just measuring something different from what they are experiencing. And the gap between those two things is where the confusion and frustration of millions of job seekers actually lives. Part 2. White-collar workers lost their safety net. For years, white-collar workers believed they were the safest group in the economy. If you had a degree, worked in an office, knew how to manage projects, write reports, or analyze data, you were supposed to be protected from the instability hitting other industries. That assumption is starting to break apart. And the most unsettling part is how gradually it is happening, quietly enough that many people do not fully recognize the shift until they are already inside it. This slowdown is not happening through massive emergency layoffs like 2008. It is happening through smaller, quieter decisions that slowly reduce opportunities across the corporate world. Hiring freezes, smaller teams, fewer entry-level openings, managers delaying replacements after employees leave, companies realizing they can operate with fewer workers than they originally thought. According to Challenger, Gray and Christmas, technology and professional services continue ranking among the industries with the highest planned job cuts. The language companies use matters, efficiency, streamlining, organizational restructuring. In corporate America, that language almost always means the same thing: more output from fewer people. And AI is accelerating that mindset. Not because artificial intelligence replaced entire offices overnight, but companies are absolutely experimenting with smaller support teams, reduced junior hiring, and heavier workloads for the employees who remain. A lot of executives now believe software can handle part of the work that used to justify hiring additional staff. That changes the math for the entire white-collar economy. Workers can feel the shift already. People with strong resumes are applying for months without results. Candidates are going through 5 or 6 interview rounds for jobs paying less than similar roles did during the hiring boom. Part 3. Employed but falling behind. One reason the labor market still looks healthier than it feels is because unemployment numbers only measure whether people have jobs. They do not measure whether those jobs still provide stability. And that distinction is becoming extremely important right now. A growing number of Americans are technically employed, while quietly moving backward financially. Some are working fewer hours than they want. Others are juggling contract work, freelance projects, and part-time schedules just to maintain the income they used to earn from one full-time position. The government classifies many of these workers as fully employed. Their bank accounts tell a different story. According to recent labor data, the number of workers holding multiple jobs has continued trending higher, not because of ambition, but because a single paycheck no longer stretches the way it used to. That pressure shows up everywhere. Rent is still elevated in most major cities. Auto insurance costs surged over the last 2 years. Credit card interest rates remain painfully high. Even workers receiving raises often feel like they are falling behind because basic expenses absorb the increase almost immediately. And companies know workers are under pressure. That changes employer behavior. Businesses are offering fewer guarantees. Corporate employers increasingly prefer temporary contracts over permanent hires. Some firms are reducing benefits quietly instead of announcing layoffs publicly. The result is a labor market that looks stable statistically, but feels fragile in everyday life. In previous downturns, the fear was losing your job completely. Now, the fear is keeping your job, while watching it become less reliable, less flexible, and less capable of supporting a middle-class lifestyle over time. That is a very different kind of economic stress. And it is one that does not show up in any official measurement. You cannot search for it in the unemployment rate. You will not find it in the monthly payroll report, but you feel it in the way people talk about money, about work, about the future, and that feeling is spreading faster than any statistic is tracking. Part 4. Employers have leverage again. A few years ago, workers had leverage. Companies competed aggressively for talent. Employees switched jobs for higher salaries, better flexibility, and signing bonuses. That era produced the Great Resignation. It produced remote work demands, being accepted without pushback. It produced counter-offers and bidding wars. For candidates, that environment is over. The balance has shifted back toward employers. And that may be the single biggest change happening in the labor market right now, the one that affects every other part of this conversation. Businesses are becoming more selective. Hiring managers are asking candidates to complete more interviews, more assessments, and more UN-paid preparation work for jobs that often pay less than similar positions did 2 years ago. Companies are taking longer to approve new roles. Managers are delaying replacing employees who leave. Teams are being asked to absorb more work without increasing headcount. Executives are asking a very different question than they were asking in 2021. Not how do we find enough people, but how few people can we actually operate with. Higher interest rates changed how companies think about expansion. Borrowing money became more expensive. Investors stopped rewarding aggressive hiring. Public companies began facing pressure to improve efficiency instead of simply adding more employees every quarter. That shift completely changed executive priorities. For years, growth was the goal. Now, efficiency is the goal. And once that mentality spreads across multiple industries simultaneously, hiring behavior changes fast. Not through one dramatic announcement, through hundreds of small decisions that together create a market where workers feel the tightening, long before it shows up in the official unemployment rate. And no one sends out a memo when that happens. You just start noticing that opportunities feel harder to reach than they used to. Part 5. AI is changing future hiring before it replaces anyone. A lot of people hear the word AI and immediately imagine mass unemployment. That is probably not what happens next, at least not immediately. The bigger change is subtler than that. Artificial intelligence is changing how companies think about future hiring before it fully replaces workers directly. And that distinction matters enormously for anyone trying to plan a career right now. Most businesses are not firing entire departments and replacing them with software overnight. What they are doing is slowing down hiring, shrinking support teams, and asking existing employees to handle more responsibilities with automation tools. Customer support teams are becoming leaner. Junior writing and research roles are harder to find. Administrative positions are disappearing gradually through attrition instead of dramatic layoffs. Even software engineering teams are under pressure to prove higher productivity with fewer people. None of these changes make major headlines individually. Together, they are quietly restructuring what the white-collar job market looks like for anyone trying to enter or advance within it. The dangerous part is that these changes hit entry-level workers first. Historically, companies hired junior employees not because they were immediately efficient, but because they could eventually grow into experienced professionals. AI changes that calculation. If software can handle basic tasks, businesses become less willing to invest in training inexperienced workers. That creates a major bottleneck for younger workers trying to enter professional industries. Recent graduates are struggling to land office jobs despite holding degrees that would have opened doors only a few years ago. Employers increasingly want workers who can manage systems immediately instead of learning gradually over time. And if that trend continues, the next phase of the job market becomes less about finding any job and more about proving that your role cannot easily be reduced, automated, or absorbed into someone else's workload. Payoff. The US job market is not collapsing, but it is clearly changing. in ways that the official data was never designed to capture, and in ways that the standard economic narrative consistently understates. Hiring is becoming more selective. Stable career paths are narrowing. White-collar industries are under pressure. AI is reshaping how companies think about labor, and millions of workers are realizing that having a job be and feeling financially secure are no longer the same thing. That last point may be the most important shift happening underneath the economy right now. Not panic, not mass layoffs, uncertainty. Because once workers lose confidence in the long-term stability of their careers, the entire economy starts behaving differently. People spend more carefully. Employees stop taking risks. Workers stay in jobs they dislike because the outside market feels riskier than before. Young professionals delay major life decisions because they no longer trust the predictability of their careers the way previous generations did. You can already see the evidence of that caution building. Consumer sentiment remains weak despite stable unemployment. Hiring managers are slower to commit. And employees are holding on to jobs they dislike because the alternative feels more uncertain than the discomfort of staying. None of this necessarily produces a dramatic economic collapse overnight. What it produces is something slower, a labor market where millions of people remain employed while gradually losing confidence in their financial future. And the people navigating this most effectively are not the ones waiting for the old rules to come back. They are the ones who recognized early that the rules changed, who stopped assuming that degrees guarantee security, that corporate jobs automatically feel safe, or that experience protects workers from restructuring, and started building their financial position around the reality of the market ASIT actually exists, not as it existed 3 years ago. If this video put words to something you have already been feeling, hit subscribe. Because every week on LayoffWatch, we break down exactly what is really happening in the US labor market for workers earning between $45,000 and $85,000 a year. And right now in the comments below, tell me this. Does your job feel more or less secure than it did 2 years ago? Drop it below. I read every single one. The next video in this series is already on your screen. I will see you there.